very finite number of jobs right now and a ton of competition for those finite jobs. So even
Hmm.
when you're lucky enough to entice an employer to take a chance on you with your limited
Hmm.
experience, look at the disparity. Like the employer's expectations and how fast they're going to demand output from you versus what you
Hmm.
are equipped for and ready for.
Hmm.
Holy God, like we're talking two very different planets. We're not just talking about different languages, we're talking about different stratospheres.
Hmm.
You're setting individuals up for failure. And I don't
Hmm.
know of anyone that is really trying to solve that problem about what an employer is going to expect and how do we translate that to people that haven't been given the tools, the training, the know how to start asking those questions on how to reach that level of autonomy. Be intentional.
Be intentional.
Life is really just that simple. When you get real quiet and you ask yourself, you know, just get real quiet, tune out the noise, ask yourself what's going on with me, what's serving me, what's not serving me. Get really intentional about what it is that you want to do. And then ask yourself, what is it going to take to adequately get there? Remove the ego, give yourself as much grace as you can, give yourself, all that positive mental fuel, that beautiful, abundant mindset, but be intentional. And then adequately resource and plan for your success.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Revenue Fuel Podcast. This is Chuck, and I have my friend Sara Filipiak here. Sara just knocked my socks off. This young lady, and I mean, everybody's younger than me. She, this young lady, she has more knowledge of sales enablement. And I think, when I find somebody that gets it, I make sure I tell you that I found somebody that gets it. And Sara gets it. And not only that, I will always want to learn sales enablement. I think it's so crucial. And she's got a new thing that she's working to that is really, really different. And it's for the people out there who are on a career search and are looking for their next chapter in life. And so I wanted to invite Sara on because, like I said, I want to learn, and I know you're going to learn from her too. Sara, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chuck. And wow, I really appreciate you flattering my ego there. So thank you for making me feel young. So I appreciate it.
Well, when you have all these gray, whiskers, I'm not going to look young anymore.
I
So,
please do not tell my husband how often I am getting my hair colored. But yes, I'm right there with you. So thank you
yeah,
for
yeah.
having me.
You're so welcome. Excellent, excellent. You have been in sales enablement for quite some time. And when we first met, you seemed to have this incredible passion for it. What is it that attracted you to that and made you just want to go at it and give it your all?
Oh goodness, how much time we got here?
As much as you want.
So my path to enablement is fairly unique in that I didn't necessarily start in enablement. I kind of sort of did, but I also kind of sort of didn't. I actually was an entrepreneur and a founder very early in my career. And
Love
I
that.
learned through being an entrepreneur that you have no business opening the doors to your business unless you have a plan on how to be able to get from where you are today to ultimately where it is you need to grow to. And it just struck me how many companies are getting it, can I just say it, a little back asswards. Right now, we are putting the product on a pedestal and we are throwing a whole bunch of just really cool ideas into the stratosphere and throwing a whole bunch of sellers at the problem, but we're not
Mm-hmm.
taking the time to ask ourselves, gee, what's it going to take to get from where we are today in order to progressively and predictably move the revenue needle?
Mm-hmm.
So that was how I got into sales enablement. Was I approached it from the lens, having been a founder, having to build and prove my own pro forma analysis,
Mm-hmm.
because no
Mm-hmm.
bank was going to lend on my concept if I
Mm-hmm.
could not show them how viable of a opportunity it was, if I didn't show them not only the marketing plan, ultimately what was my growth strategy to get from a single unit location to a multi-franchise location. If I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do that, forget it. Like I was already out of business before I ever opened the doors. So I approach enablement through the lens of you have to understand that you can't build a house unless you have the blueprint first. So I approach it from being a strategic thinker, understanding the goals, having been a leader of a company.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start to drill down through all of the layers of who are we going to need to adequately resource and what are they going
Mm-hmm.
to need in order to truly thrive in their role so that we can all build something bigger than any individual one of us. So, my career, I've had a lot of cool hats on my head. I've been a founder, I've been a team lead, I have been a enterprise sales leader, I have been a global enablement leader. I've been a struggling individual producer. Like, it's unless you can understand the myriad of different components in this really awesome ecosystem that we're building that's bigger than the individual, you have to have that strategic thinking, I think, to not only understand the planning aspect, but understand who are all the players involved in the equation and what are they going to need to truly unlock their potential. So that was my path to enablement. Was kind of weird. I grew up in the middle of farm country in the rural Midwest, and I had to create an awful lot of opportunity because not a lot existed where I was. And that was how I became an entrepreneur early on. And then when I moved out to Boston, I realized, well, hey, I don't have to have this many hats on my head anymore. I can work for somebody and I can just share what I know. And it's served me in a number of different capacities, but enablement has always been my guts. At the heart of who I am, I'm a creative problem solver and I'm a teacher. And those are the two things that I love about enablement.
And what I think resonates is the fact that you had to create your own opportunity, the fact that you've had the different roles, the fact that you've had to struggle. And anybody who's been worth their salt in sales has struggled among other roles. It gives you different perspectives. And if you have the aptitude to be able to combine the different experiences from the different roles and the different perspectives to create something new, a new view, if you will, it really can set you on the road to saying, all right, let's really get down to the meat of the problem. Let's really get down to the heart of the problem,
If you're
because
brave
I'm
enough to
out.
look at the heart of the problem.
And so many people aren't. I'm talking to entrepreneurs. I'm talking to founders. In fact, a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with a guy who said, I just had a conversation with somebody who told me this exact same story. It's a $2 billion company. And the story goes something like this. I want to grow. So what do? I need more sales. I'm going to hire more salespeople. So I go out and I find a hunter. Right?
Yeah.
And I figured that through the sheer force of their effort and 10,000 phone calls a year, they're going to grow my business. And 6-9 months down the road, there's finger pointing, frustration. They start to criticize work ethic. And they've spent a lot of money that is just a waste. And the truth be told, that person may have been a fine sales rep, may have been the hunter that they seek, but they weren't ready to support him or her.
No.
They just weren't. They literally have no resources, pitiful onboarding, pitiful training, and all these other things that you need. So when I talk to clients about what you need to grow, the last thing I talk about is hiring. And I just, it boggles the mind to me. It's logical, but I think maybe because I've had many different roles, maybe because I've been a general manager, I've been a manufacturer, I've been in sales, I've been in marketing, I have struggled. I have put the time in the lobbies and whatnot, the old-fashioned way, when we didn't even have cell phones, if you can imagine.
I remember that. I was one of those people
I
that
know,
didn't have a cell
right?
phone right away.
You didn't have a cell phone. We didn't have a computer. We didn't have any of it. And you had to figure out the way to do it. And that really gives you a different perspective, especially now when you're willing to adapt and you're willing to adjust. So that is how you got.
Unfortunately, not all that uncommon. I hear that story every single day. And it's one of the reasons why personally I had to end up changing course. And I think I've alluded that to you offline. Part of the reason why I'm pivoting a little bit away from sales enablement, I think my heart will always be in planning, execution, and accelerating people's time to value. I just couldn't do it anymore. I've been building these onboarding systems that so many companies are looking to just, it's that spaghetti analogy. Let's throw a whole bunch of sellers at the wall, see who sticks, and let's just hodgepodge and cobble together just a few little doodads to get them up and into productivity. But we're really only going to give them about maybe 5% of what they need. I just couldn't commoditize people anymore, where people are being brought into ecosystems set up for failure, and then through no fault of their own, they're churned out of that organization. Meanwhile, these companies are just weakening and weakening and weakening their revenue flywheel. And I couldn't do it anymore. So I've made the shift. If I can share with
Go.
you what I'm doing now, I've decided that we need to start giving power back to the people. So I'm taking my onboarding acceleration program and I'm building it into a career coaching module where we're teaching people how to think like the strategic CEO of their own career, be able to plug themselves and accelerate their own time to value. Because let's face it, we live in a world where AI is only getting more and more sophisticated and manual based work is starting to go bye-bye. It's only going to continue to escalate that trend. We've got over 2 billion new grads that come into the workforce every year. We've got 1 million laid off over the course of these rolling past 12 months. You've got such an abundance of talent, and so many people do not know how to take the ownership position of their career and accelerate their time to value. And let's face it, to that point, Chuck, no employer is going to invest their time, their money, their resources, their limited bandwidth into equipping and empowering the individual any longer. So that's Sarah on her soapbox, but you had mentioned, my background in revenue enablement, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about, I kind of gave up, but kind of didn't. So yes, I definitely have a lot to share on revenue enablement. It's still revenue enablement, just a slightly different lens now, I guess.
That's exactly where I was going to go with this. I don't even think it's a slightly different lens. I have long said to people that your career, and I guess it's most prescient and understandable for people who are looking for a job. And I've actually had people who didn't agree with me. Well, you're just selling. And you're selling the service that you know best. And that is the primary service that your private corporation provides. In my case, my CEO of the corporation is my wife. I'm just the vice president when she lets me. But that is the service that you provide. And there is exactly zero enablement for individuals. Yeah. And so it's a direct translation from understanding what it is you do, understanding your value proposition, okay, creating resources so that you can do it more effectively. Yeah. The only thing we know about is, slap together a resume, use the old format, okay? You have to write a cover letter, and people use the same dang cover letter, and they start throwing stuff at the wall and see how many job ads they can apply to and seeing if it sticks. Yeah. It's the exact same analogy. And so your skills and your experience translate 100% in my near humble opinion.
I appreciate
and I think it's honestly, the difference is I think it's God's work. Because you're going to really helping the individual. And so that's why I love it.
I just couldn't handle it anymore. I took one look at my daughter. My daughter is 2 years old. And I thought to myself, I am losing her formative years, breaking my back, 80 plus hours a week as a solo enabler. I was the global head of revenue enablement for a major supply chain company that had billions and billions flowing through their architecture every day. And yet I was a department of one to stand up their entire go-to-market engine. Of course, that's realistic, right? So here I am breaking my back 80 plus hours a week, and I look over at my daughter, and whether she says it out loud or not, because of course she doesn't say it out loud yet, but she's thinking to herself, why in the hell is mommy talking at a computer all day long? Why is mommy always on her laptop rather than looking and playing with me? Because all I want to do is have mommy read me a story. And I had this major epiphany, especially over these rolling 12, 18 months now that mass layoffs have become the norm. And I just realized, holy cow, I'm fighting for the wrong team. And it's time to start giving people their power back and helping them realize that you're not beholden to any employer. An employer is lucky enough if they're able to have the opportunity to work with you. But what other skill set, Chuck, is more invaluable, regardless of industry, regardless of role, than the ability to understand the critical importance, not only of your particular role, but how that role fits into something that's bigger than any individual? How does the output and the long tail ramifications of what I'm giving, how does this impact my hiring manager, the department as a whole, our greater stakeholders? I'm sorry, but what greater skill is there? So I think when people think that, I'm a seller, I sell product, I'm just going to push product, you're missing the whole point. The whole point is it's psychology in motion. It's taking the time to understand what are the underlying root causes of some of these massive problems we're looking to solve, and how do we build something and connect with the hardest thing in the world to do? How do we connect with people, because people are unpredictable, and how do we
Yep.
build and collaborate and build an awful lot of something out of nothing? So it always fascinates me, to your point about the two-dimensional resume too. Why are we still doing that? Why are we copying and pasting old cover letters and black and white resumes? Do we live in a two-dimensional environment anymore? No. And in this world in particular, it's not enough to just say you have a skill. You have to prove that you've got the skill. You have to embody that and demonstrate your thought leadership. So it just, there's so much I could say on this topic. So you just tell me where you want to go, and I can
Well,
probably complain about it.
oh, see that we're like soul brother and sister. I could complain about
Probably.
stuff too. The interesting thing is there is no greater skill, and we think about in terms of experience. We start with a budget and we hire that young person, and we think about the experience being within our industry.
Yeah.
We're selling a similar product and service. But what we really want is an entrepreneur.
Yes.
We want that entrepreneur. We want that person who has that insight, who understands what their role is in the greater good, in the greater mission, okay, and can adapt within it in order to make to make progress and realize the results that both of you want. Which, in the concept of sales, is I want to make a better income. Okay, I want to make an impact. I want to have stories to tell. I want to be proud of my work, not I sold a product and I worked my ass off and that's all I know.
Yeah.
And so, to your point, that's the experience that's missing in the younger folks, is that, and how do we bring them up to that level of being able to understand their role in that?
Not to mention, by the time they find an employer that's willing to take a chance on them, because let's face it, very finite number of jobs right now and a ton of competition for those finite jobs. So even when you're lucky enough to entice an employer to take a chance on you with your limited experience, look at the disparity. Like the employer's expectations and how fast they're going to demand output from you versus what you are equipped for and ready for. Holy God, like we're talking two very different planets. We're not just talking about different languages, we're talking about different stratospheres. You're setting individuals up for failure. And I don't know of anyone that is really trying to solve that problem about what an employer is going to expect and how do we translate that to people that haven't been given the tools, the training, the know-how to start asking those questions on how to reach that level of autonomy. So entrepreneur is an awesome word for it. But no one has that skill set, and let's face it. Back when I was in college, I'm not going to disparage college because my goodness, it was invaluable in a number of different ways. But I don't even know that an internship is a clear enough system where it is translating all of the acumen that you've digested via lecture format with people talking at you. I don't think people have given you the critical reasoning skills to start to think, how do you start to marry these pieces together? What are you going to need to do in short order so you prove your value to that hiring manager? Because let's face it, no hiring manager this day and age is going to just value the words alone. You have to embody the skill. You have to demonstrate the skill. And if you can't do that, if you can't prove what you're capable of, they're not going to take a gamble on that. So that's where my heart is right now. It's breaking thinking that there's this massive disparity. Somebody's got to fix it.
And that is a big part of whether it be coaching someone for their career, which is really just the flip side of sales enablement, right? You have to enable their skills so that they can get the job in the first place, and then enable their skills once they're on board. In either role, it's still the same thing. How do you take them from a level of not understanding the customers, not understanding the value proposition, not understanding what they're living every day, and then present them with tools and teach them how to use them to answer those questions in a more effective way that allows it to resonate with someone who should have some inkling that this person knows what they're talking about. Because frankly, if you don't, why would I even give you any time whatsoever?
It's going to show real quick.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing on the career side, right? It's the same exact enablement. Again, the resources are pitifully lacking. They're lacking in the business world, as you so eloquently explained. And boy, they're really lacking for the career side. It's all the same old crappy advice.
Well, it's amazing how many people are, I call it, voluntarily getting ghosted when you throw your resume down that black hole. I was looking at just today alone, the average entry level job right now, Chuck, has 1 out of 374 applicants on that one posting. There's one entry level role open. You've got 374 people fighting for that one BDR role. Not only is that, I could easily go off on a tangent here, but I'll bite my tongue for a minute. That's a 0.002% chance that you're going to get that job just by doing the same practices that you do, that we've been taught all of our lives. I still remember actually circling job opportunities in the newspaper. Like I told you, I'm not as young as people think I am. I still remember that when it was a two-dimensional world, but we have to roll with what our landscape is giving us. AI is here to stay, and like it or not, if we're not utilizing all of the tools in our kitty, and we're continually seeking feedback on how we can embody our acumen and accelerate our time to value, forget it. Like, we're just not going to be competitive. So I'm telling candidates right now, do not put your resume down that black hole, because you're not going to get people, you're not standing out. And the average person that is sending their resume down that black hole, you're really only getting that job if you have a relationship internally, if you have an internal advocate. So more so, it's about teaching people that that's a sales skill in and of itself, is seeking out those individuals that you can demonstrate and prove value to, make them look like a superhero, and then have them advocate for your candidacy and show them what you're going to bring to the table. Not only are they going to get the referral fee, but they're going to make you look great, and they're going to tee you up for a really warm, interview process. It's mind-boggling. All of the various things that we could easily be doing if we just start to think about, well, shoot, like, I really need a job. Am I really going to waste my whole day clicking the LinkedIn easy button? Or am I going to be strategic and get really specific about who am I? What is my unique value? What is it I can prove time and time again? I'm going to go after this narrow sect of opportunities, but I'm going to have a much higher conversion because every single one of those job opportunities fits me like a glove, and I've got people that are willing to advocate for me.
And and by the way, if it says easy apply, if it's got an easy button, there's no free lunch. It's probably too good to be true, because you got a bunch of people, a bunch of drones are out there, easy apply, easy apply, easy apply, easy apply, easy apply. And you're tossed into a system that's checking you on keywords, frankly. Yes, there's more to an applicant tracking system than just keywords. I get it. A recruiter's job is incredibly difficult because of the volume. They need something to help them. But you have to get past that keyword search for the systems that use that. And you don't know which ones do and which ones don't.
Right.
So there ain't no easy button.
No.
But I think about my own experience. And so the statistic that I heard was that on average, people have 7 jobs in their career. I think that number's going up.
Yes.
I will tell you, if that is the number, then I'm an overachiever.
I'm an
on my
overachiever
10th at 57 years old. And I went back and I looked at all of my jobs. And I had one from a job ad back in 1989. And I had one from a recruiter and 2 from a recruiter. All the other were through my network. Every single one. And yet, so many people don't invest the time in going out and do that. They wait until it's too late to go out and create those relationships and create a support network.
Yep.
I invest in it every single day.
Yes.
Literally every single day. I've had over 100 networking meetings in the past year, according to my analytics that I keep. And I mean, really, I have analytics.
That's amazing. I love it. See,
And-
the operational tactician in me absolutely loves that. I actually coach to that. I teach people how to give themselves daily time-blocked KPIs and hold themselves accountable to that. So well done, sir.
Well, and other people are using LinkedIn so that they can sell something.
I know.
All the while, they're destroying their reputation. And now if you're that person who came in and pitch slapped me And that's your reputation, just someone who doesn't care about anybody except their numbers. And you're just going to, collect me and toss me out
Right.
in the trash. When it comes time that you need that network, that 80% of your jobs are going to come from your network,
They're not going
you're
to be there for you.
screwed.
Yeah.
You're just absolutely screwed.
Right.
And it has to be about helping someone else. And if
It
the
really
universe
that
is
simple.
kind, it comes back. And that's really, so more people need to hear that message.
I
More
can't-
people need to hear what you shared about the number of applications.
I can't tell you just how easy life really is when you realize that the smartest thing we ever learned was when we were 3 years old. I'm teaching my toddler right now, is the golden rule. If you just focus on what is it about me? What can I do to be of service, to give abundantly, as without agenda, without bias, without worry that it'll ever come back to me in any way, shape, or form, guarantee you 10 times over it has always come back. It is not always a one-to-one. It is not always a direct correlation. But the more you give, the more people see it. The more they're willing to advocate for you. The more that you're willing to just share and teach, the more people are willing to say, oh my goodness, wow, did that help me? You know something? You need to follow her. Every single day she's posting something that has just been light bulbs for me. Like that is the secret. The secret is give abundantly. Stop worrying about something that is selfish. Stop pitch slapping. Stop just thinking that everything that you do has, I can't tell you, like yesterday alone, Chuck, sometimes I'm guilty of this where I forget to check my LinkedIn connection request folder. And sometimes I'll just let it go and I'll forget because I'm just like, oh, I'm too busy like talking to my network or like doing all these other things. I forget that folder. So it piled up and I'm just like, okay, LinkedIn maintenance, I'm just going to clean this up. And I'm a nice person. So I always give people the benefit of the doubt. So if you send me a connection request, I'm probably going to accept it because I like people for a living. I care about people for a living. So I accepted no less than about 50 connection requests yesterday while I was cleaning up my folder.
Wow.
You want to know how many pitch slaps I got in less than 12 hours, Chuck?
Yes, I do.
Of those 50, you want to venture a number? Go ahead and guess.
Okay. Out of 50, 42.
You're pretty dang close.
I'm a pessimist in that regard.
Not everyone sent me, you know how you'll accept the connection request and sometimes people will follow up with a note saying, thank you for accepting my request. That's what I meant was the follow-up message off of those 50. So not everyone's going to send a message right away.
Right.
But of those 50, I was shocked to get over 20 yesterday in 12 hours. Thank you for accepting my connection request. Here's me. This is why you should buy from me. Would you be willing to do this for $800 an hour? Or like, I'm like, dude, I don't know you yet. Like, can we date first before we get married? I mean, I knew my husband was the one after 5 minutes on our first date, but my goodness, we didn't get married for about 2 years yet. Like, you got to take the time to vet the relationship and make sure there's something worth solving here in the first place. But I'm just appalled at how many people dive into the selfish lane first without, think through the lens of who you're talking to and why should I care? Where's the value that you're coming from? And yeah, open my eyes. Absolutely. I'm the first person to buy into people, but that's not even turning on the oven. That's going right for like turkey dinner.
Yeah. Well, if you give it 2 to 3 weeks, the number will rise to about 80%.
Oh, I know it.
They're on to us. They're on to the pitch slap mantra. So they pause, but they ultimately can't help themselves. And so, but when you're going out there and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to start doing this, it's not with the thought of getting something back in mind.
Never.
If you hear this, if you listen to the passion in Sarah's voice over this topic, you say, okay, what shouldn't I do? I hear this story over and over and over again. We laugh about it. They gave it a name. It's called a pitch slap. I mean, for goodness sake, we literally laugh at you out there that are doing it. And so talk about sales enablement. This is a training you have to put your team through, right? how to actually do this in a way that's going to be effective in the long term. In the short term, it's not going to be effective. How do you do it in the long term? That's enablement. And it's completely analogous to how you handle your career. Mm-hmm. How am I going to go out there and how am I going to do this? And of course, when I'm not in a room with people doing my job or on camera or whatever things I do, the rest of my life, I'm the guy in the corner. So for the people that are coming out into this activity for the first time, what does that look like? I mean, what do you do to go out and say, okay, I'm going to put myself out there in a way that gives first?
Yeah, that is such an awesome question. I remember when it happened to me, because I wasn't immune from this whole layoff season. Enablement is one of the first things on the chopping block. If you cannot prove tangible value to the bottom line, you're seen as an expense, not as an investment. Boy, Chuck, that was scary for me. My daughter had recently had skull surgery. When I lost my role, it was eliminated. And ironically, they delivered the axe the week after I deployed my brand new onboarding system for the company. And the first thought I had is, oh my goodness, what in the world am I going to do? And I actually had not at that point in time, because I'd been working in Boston. I had been working for several different companies. Like, I never prioritized building my LinkedIn network. I wasn't an entrepreneur anymore. I had left Wisconsin behind. Yeah. And nothing wrong with Wisconsin. I'm still a passionate cheesehead. But I hadn't taken the time to feed my garden, so to speak, right? I was not cultivating. I was connecting with people organically just because they were colleagues or we had things in common. We were part of similar networking groups. But it wasn't until I lost that role and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this is going to get really bad too, because there's so many people that are just mass layoffs abound. So I thought to myself, Sara, you're not going to just throw your resume down a black hole. What you're going to do is you're going to just start talking to people. You're going to start sharing what it is that you know. So that's what I did, is I made a plan that whether I had something insightful or not that day, I was going to find something of value to give my community. I didn't worry about liking or following. Like, a lot of people they do this like tactic where they're just trying to like and comment for the sake of trying to gain exposure. I did not start that way. How I built my following is I just started to come from contribution. I just started to give. That's it. It came naturally. So I started to talk about one enablement tip a day. So whether my audience was enablers, SDRs, AEs, sales leaders, I just started to share. So I would talk about the 10 pitch slaps. Like, I would actually create a diagram called the pitch slap map. I would talk about the different ways to effectively communicate with people. I would talk about coaching best practices. So if you're a sales leader, which, by the way, you want to talk people that do not get properly enabled, we give enablement kind of sort of to SDRs and AEs, but those first-time managers, or even managers that have been managing now for upwards of 10 years, they do not get formal leadership training. So you've got people that have been lucky hunters that have pounded like crazy to just beat the pulp out of people and sell them a whole bunch of stuff. But do you think they know how to coach an SDR when they're really struggling? They're just going to pummel that person. So Sara on her soapbox. Sorry about that.
No, it's a good soapbox, and I'm going to come back to that. So keep going.
It is one of my biggest just painstake, boils my blood, in case you can't tell. Like, it actually makes me mad.
All right, well, I'll give you a chance to calm down.
I'm good.
I've long said that there is a massive difference between being a salesperson and being a sales manager.
Yes.
Massive difference. And so often companies will take their best salesperson, okay, and they'll promote them. One, ouch, because it can have, if you can't backfill them, you've got one heck of an effect on the bottom line.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But two, the skill set is completely different. Completely different. You need to be a teacher, which means you need to understand people. You need to understand teaching styles. You need to be able to elucidate what works and what worked for you in a way that it's teachable.
Yes.
And salespeople are known for, they run and gun. They just run and gun. And they say, Works for me. I don't need to worry about it.
Right?
Oh, but I'm your top sales guy. I deserve that director role because I made the most money or hit
Right.
quota the most times. But are you going to make the other people better? Or are you just in it for the money? In which case, you're not going to be fit for the role. You're
In
just not. In fact, I would venture to say most sales managers that really kill it are not the best salesperson that the company ever had.
What I would say is that in theory, the best salespeople should be the best sales leaders. Why? In theory, they should understand people so well that that's why they've had a plethora of sales, right? Oftentimes that's not the case. And in a lot of these really horrible best practices that we have normalized and we've turned into sales folklore, we are honestly just pounding people into the dirt and grinding on them until they finally submit. I think that that is appalling sales. I do not advocate for that. In my opinion, the best sellers I've ever coached in my career have gone on to be some of the best sales leaders. But I think it's because the way that they were equipped as sellers was not grind people into a pulp. It was all about coming from a place of genuine understanding and empathy. If you can take the time to truly understand and speak the organic language of someone else, understand exactly where they're coming from, what are their underlying pains, and creatively problem solve with that individual, then you've got a great seller and you've got a great coach. In my humble opinion, in a lot of the enablement systems that I've built, being a great seller is the same thing as being a great coach. It's just literally kicked up a notch. So rather than selling, one off to a customer, you are now selling to a team of sellers and you are motivating them to want to level up their game every day. But again, it's all dependent on how was that person set up for success right off the get-go? Do they have the emotional intelligence? Do they have a lot of the soft skills required that if they were missing those as a seller, promise you, hand to God, they're going to be an abysmal leader because it's just the core skill that you need.
And sometimes the sales managers are promoted for the wrong reason. I will tell you, the first promotion that I got to director of sales and marketing, I was horribly unequipped. And the results showed. And I got the hell out of there because honestly, I wasn't suitable for the role. As it turns out, some years later, as it became more experienced and I had insight into human behavior and being able to help people to understand a way to look at the situation differently than they were in. Because a salesperson, I don't know what else to do. And they have a hard time stepping outside of themselves to look at it from a different perspective. Look at it from the customer's perspective. I've got to hit my number. I've got to hit my number. Well, go sit on the other side of the table. Go sit on the other side of the computer screen and try and take a hard look at yourself. And until you can achieve that skill, you're going to really have a difficult time. And that to me is beyond empathy.
Absolutely.
Empathy is clearly that feeling, and the feeling is crucial. But there's a sort of, I guess it's an empathetic
It's an
intuition
emotional
or
intelligence.
learning that has to come. You have to be able to say, okay, this is the way the situation is. How am I going to act differently in a way that's going to evoke a certain human behavior? And if you don't understand the human behavior, you may have an instinct for it, but if you don't understand that if I do this, then this is likely to happen, you're going to have a hard time coaching. More importantly, because you're not going to understand the lessons to coach.
Absolutely.
And it's coaching is rapid fire. Teaching's easy. Well, it's not easy. I don't want to belittle all the teachers out there. But in a sense, it's easier. Okay, in that I've come in, I'm prepared, I get it out, and we go practice. Coaching, it's react. It's just coming a mile a minute. You can sit in a meeting, in your weekly meeting, your monthly meeting, and you've got 10 people, each with a different situation, and you've got, and then remember, oh wait a minute, I don't have all the answers. There's back to those leadership skills. What worked for you? Jane. Okay, maybe you can give some advice and being able to switch on the fly. Those are, you either have it or you don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that the best teachers, they are the best coaches because in order to impart knowledge, someone has to embody it. And I think what you were saying about teaching, most people take teachers for granted because they think that they're just going to talk at you and give you a whole bunch of information that you just have to find your own path within that information that they're giving you. And I agree, there are a lot of bad teachers out there. What I would say is that the most effective teachers are the ones that they help the individual, even if it's a classroom setting. They find the path to help that individual find their unique voice within the content or the curricula and help them forge a path to be able to unlock that aha moment so that that person, not only do they take it, they embody it, they're like, holy cow, I didn't even think of that before. I know how to be able to take that and accelerate with that concept now. So I don't know. I think coaching and teaching, it's kind of like a blurry line for me.
It is. I think context and pace are very, very different.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's one of the things. I mean, all of us that really take our career and our life seriously are out pursuing, continually trying to learn.
Oh God,
I'm 57 years old. One of my dearest friends said, "You're 57, dude. Find a way to land the plane." I'm like, no, dude, that's not me. I can't. At this age, I still have too much fire in my belly. So one of the things that I've learned, and ironically, and I never thought about it this way, but I practice martial arts, and 13 years ago, I began to also teach it. It's not a full-time gig. That's not of interest. I teach it because, one, it helps me to be better at it. Two, I get more out of it that I can take outside of the dojo. The dojo is actually the less important part, both of my training as a martial artist, but also my experience as a teacher of the martial arts. Once again, there's times when this is the curriculum, we're going to deliver the curriculum. Other times we're practicing, we got to figure it out on the go, and I need to be able to elucidate it in words that they can understand. Those skills become transferable when you begin to learn how to elucidate concepts in a way that can help someone to see something differently and take different action. Those skills are transferable.
Absolutely.
The words are different, the concepts are different, but the skill is exactly the same. And that's one of the reasons why I continue to do the teaching part, is because I can use it in the rest of my life. It's practice repetitions, if you will.
Yeah. It's part of the reason why I still, to this day, I'm still a yoga instructor. It's not just to enhance my own practice, but the practice of yoga is... So did you know that yoga actually was not a physical practice? It had nothing to do with poses at first.
I did not know that.
It was just meditation. It was just a meditative practice on how can you slow down the mind and allow yourself to just observe. It is observing the fluctuations of the mind from a place of non-judgment. That's what yoga is. Over time, over fads, over several different, metamorphoses of what yoga has evolved into, the physicalization has been incorporated. But part of the reason why I continue to this day to love being a yoga instructor is being a teacher as well as a student. I don't think you can ever say that you've truly mastered anything. The day that you stop finding curiosity, the day you stop deepening your knowledge and understanding how that same thing that you might love and feel like you understand, just because I understand it being Sara, Filipiak, that doesn't mean I've ever walked in the shoes of Chuck. It doesn't mean that I've ever understood your experience on how you relate to any of your martial arts practice. It's through that lens that I think we deepen our knowledge and our ability to communicate empathetically to how someone can reach their aha moment within whatever it is that we're trying to impart from a knowledge perspective. But it's that perpetual willingness to learn and understand that it's not about us. Like, especially from the perspective of being a teacher, I could not do this work, Chuck, if I were a selfish human. You have to be willing to give and do all that you possibly can in service of somebody else. And the day that I stop seeking out what that means for somebody else is the day that I'm no longer a teacher.
And you said it just a few sentences ago. In my opinion, and I infer that you agree wholeheartedly, you have to take great pleasure in helping someone else find their aha moment.
Yes.
Helping them to succeed. I'll be honest with you. I'm not that super competitive guy I want to win the sales contest. That's not it at all. I find my greatest pleasure from helping the companies succeed, from helping the entrepreneurs succeed, from helping the individual contributors succeed and be better at what they do so they can go home and live a happier life. Because the reason we all do this is not so we can hit our number. I don't care how shallow you are. You've got something else going on outside the job. It's the reason that drives you. You have mentioned your adorable little girl and your husband several times on here. I have mentioned my wife. I have not mentioned my 22-year-old son, who is the light of my life, but there you go. I got it in. I usually
Love
do
it.
on these episodes, and they're the reason.
Yeah.
And and because I have that, once again, the empathetic individual is going to say, I assume that they have that. And that customer on the other side, or in the context of a career search, that recruiter on the other side, that hiring manager on the other side, they have something akin to what I have. It may or may not be at this certain level that they desire at the moment, but they certainly aspire to it. And so if I can help them achieve what they need to achieve, maybe it's just because I'm a great salesperson and I make my boss look good so he can hit his number. I would take great pride in that. Good for you. I want you to succeed like that. Or that recruiter who's, searched desperately to have the right person.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm helping him or her look really good at a time in their career when maybe we don't even know that they desperately need it. I take great joy in that. And I think if people look at it that way, they will be more successful. They become that empathetic person that not only helps the people around them, but also helps them to take the next steps.
Absolutely.
It helps them be better salespeople. It helps them be better employees. It helps them to be better prospective candidates
Right.
or leaders.
Chuck, I feel like you might be my professional soulmate today because you are literally speaking to my guts. It is one of the first things that I coach to in any onboarding, enablement program, career coaching program, is when you can connect that nothing is about us as individuals. We all have a deep purpose. We all have an inner why, whether we realize it or not. There are so many people that do not know what their why is. I feel sad
Agreed.
for that. But when we start to realize that our why is meant to align to other people's whys, and it's when we can find that each of our voices, they're not adversarial, it is not in any way in conflict. I can fulfill and live out my best purpose by aligning what it is that I do in this one life that I've got to try and evoke something bigger than myself. And I think that that's the real alchemy, is when you can find what your purpose, what your calling is, and you can align that to something bigger than yourself, and you can tie together all of the stakeholders, whether they're internal, they're external, whether it's the customers you serve, whether it's trying to make your boss look good or your department thrive or your board of directors feel like they don't have to chop heads this month, like whatever it is, to try and tie together all of these universal whys. That's the magic. That's where we start to build something truly bigger and better than ourselves. And that's where people truly want to go above and beyond. Call me an altruist, I definitely am, but I agree with you. You have to come from that place of authentic contribution. Otherwise, it will always fall to something egotistical, something selfish, something very surface level and completely unfulfilling. And that's unfortunately where I think a lot of the world falls at the moment into commodity land, is we stopped remembering that there's a deeper purpose that we're trying to fulfill. And we stopped letting our stakeholders, those that we're bringing into companies, we stopped letting them feel a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's, I think, why I'm passionate about onboarding as well.
So if you lived under a rock for, most of your life, like I did up until 6 months ago, Sarah's discussions about the why, it was popularized by Simon Sinek, Sinek.
One of my
if you
favorite
haven't seen
authors.
his TEDx talk, I swear to God, it changed my life. He gave me nothing except a different way of thinking, and it's worth it. But I think that when you approach it from that way and you know what your why is, you become so clear on at least the direction of what's really important to you that it becomes easier to say no.
Yes.
And it's not that no should be the habit, right? We all don't want to be Jim Carrey when he was just yes man, right? You don't want to be the opposite either. But when you're able to say no, you develop a certain clarity of what's important. It is equally important to searching for a job and fulfilling your next role as it is to being a salesperson. We talk about in sales as part of a good onboarding enablement is who is our ideal customer profile, our ICP. And I think that there is a mistaken understanding of that phrase in that people think that ICP is strictly about who we want to go after.
Yes.
But I think the more important aspect of ICP is who we're willing to say no to. We all say, oh, we got to niche down. Actually, we don't all say that. Quite a number of people say we've got to niche down. The very concept of niching down, whether it be in a personal endeavor or a professional endeavor, is the concept of saying we're going to say no to a whole heck of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And until we know our why, from the personal perspective, and the company's why, we don't know who to say no to. And we're certainly uncomfortable with it. And then there's those entrepreneurs that are struggling who don't feel like they can say no to anybody because they're sacrificing something, when in reality, it's highly inefficient and a waste of time and money to say yes to everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole
Find the
reason why the
balance.
megaphone is effective, right? It's when you
Absolutely.
concentrate that you create the echo chamber that you need. I'm a former
right.
opera singer. The very first thing that I learned being a former opera singer, totally different lifetime ago. I started singing professionally when I was 14 years old. So lots of party tricks, Chuck.
Okay, we are. I swear to God, we're practically twins. I'm a classically trained vocalist. I've been on mic for 30 years.
I can hear
and
it.
no, I don't have the experience that you have, but
No,
I'm sure I'm not as good.
I'm sure that you are,
I
but
doubt it.
you can actually hear it in the way that you even talk. You know how to pose your voice. You're utilizing your formant. And that is one of the first things that you learn as an opera singer, as a professional singer, is that your voice, for how tiny your vocal folds are and how small and non-spacious your mouth and your throat are, you create this monstrous echo chamber when you concentrate on the smallest part of your nasal pharynx. So this is funny for anyone who's listening, I'm sure, but when I would sing, I just kept thinking, aim for that really narrow little pocket behind my front teeth, and every single time I hit it, like my voice would amplify like crazy. That's the same concept with niching down, is the more you focus and get real intentional, and I think that that's the word, to really think through. We have to stop thinking of with this scarcity mindset that, by saying no to things, we're eliminating opportunity. That is the opposite. What we're doing is we're getting so super intentional, and the more intentional that we get, the more energy. It is this massive law of physics that, don't quote me, I'm not a scientist, but it's this amazing energetic transformation that happens when you intensify energy in the smallest, most intentional pocket. And that's what is going to catapult your reach. Every single time I've done that, the more I have a mentor that tells me, Sara, the more specific, the more terrific. The more specific, the more terrific. The more you get so super intentional, the more it catapults. So, anywho, sorry, I didn't mean to talk opera there.
But, my mind immediately went to why I've stopped singing hymns in church, because I have to quiet my voice down and I have to focus on reserving. And so I get so congested, I can't even sing the hymns in church anymore. And it takes the fun out of it for me.
Yeah.
But anyway, but what you talk about is the scarcity mindset. It's really akin to, if I think about it in less scientific terms, I feel like I'm going to miss out. I feel like when times are abundant, I've got to gorge. Okay? I've got to consume. What happens when we do that day in and day out, we start to have a belly like mine, okay? We start to look in the mirror and see multiple chins like me, and we become less effective adults. We have a harder time thinking. We have a harder time performing, and it continues to feed itself. But when we work with that abundance mindset, we know that the next meal is around the corner. It gives us more confidence, and our bodies respond. And I have every reason to believe through my experience that our performance in life is exactly the same way. We work in that abundance mindset. We believe in ourselves. We develop a confidence that the next opportunity is around the corner. Okay? And in that confidence, we become more effective. We continue to improve. We perform better. And when you do that, guess what?
More opportunities come your way.
Is around the corner. Okay, and it is truly that abundance mindset. I think that's just crucial.
It is
So,
critical. I mean, I liken it to, do we ever take for granted that the sun is going to come up the next day? No, we just trust. We know that the sun is going to come up the next day. Why can't we do that for ourselves? If we were to wake up giving ourselves our absolute best energy and we stop, if we tune out all the noise, do you know how much energy is lost all day long, universally? By focusing on
hmm
all of the crap that we can't control, focusing
hmm
on all of the stuff that could go wrong, all of the things that like haven't even happened yet, all of the things that we wish we could have done differently. If you allow yourself, and that's why I still to this day, like, yoga is so in my guts. If I give myself permission to just be super intentional and to
hmm
take in the lesson, observe what I can take from something, and let it go. Let
hmm
go, give myself my best energy, rededicate myself to being present. What can I control in the present moment? And how can I be super intentional and give this my best? If I do that every single time, like clockwork, great things
hmm
happen. It's when I get sucked into these vicious cycles that never serve us. But when I catch myself going into one of those scarcity, funks, I'm like, is this the sun? Is this knowing
hmm
that this stormy day, it's not going to rain every day.
hmm
Rain sucks sometimes, but sometimes it's really necessary. Sometimes it's cleansing, right?
hmm
How do I just give myself permission to just acknowledge this moment, learn from it, whatever I'm experiencing? I'm not going to judge myself. How do I take this in and then give myself permission to know that there's something better ahead? And that's how I let go of those. But we all have them, right? Like every single one of us, we slip and fall into these crap
hmm
mindsets that don't do anything to serve us. But it's trust, and I don't
hmm
know why we as humans we don't innately trust ourselves.
And I circle back to the impetus for a whole discussion about enablement in both aspects, because to me they're exactly parallel. If we recognize that and we make a conscious effort not to contribute that, okay, to what it is we're trying to achieve, or more importantly, what we're trying to help someone achieve, okay, if we can get all that noise out of the process, if we can get all that ambiguity out of the process, then we can focus on what's really, really important, and hopefully teach them that this new level of focus will be more productive if they just eliminate all that. But again, our job as teachers, coaches, enablers, in the positive sense, in the context of this podcast, not the negative sense, but our job is to do that. Our job is to put forth way more of the stuff that matters and will actually help them be better than it is to put forth the garbage that might come from our personal biases and too much pessimism or whatever litters our brain.
You know,
And so, I mean, it all applies.
absolutely. And I think, coming full circle, just for a moment, we opened this conversation with, are we willing to take that long, hard look in the mirror and ask ourselves the tough questions, to take lessons from things that are uncomfortable? How often does
hmm
ego get in the way, especially when corporations are concerned and everyone's operating out of fear, and we're all
hmm
operating like the house is on fire, like no one has
hmm
time for anything. So we're operating from a place of everything is on fire and we just all have to produce. I wonder how often we are being led by leaders that are unwilling to take that reflective look in the mirror and ask ourselves the tough questions on, are we doing things the right way, or are we operating from a place of scarcity mindset? More
hmm
often than not, I'm going to go on a limb and say high 90s. I venture to bet more often than not, we're being guided through this fear mentality. And I think that it's what permeates through our society too. And when leaders at the top are operating like the house is on fire, and we're not giving ourselves permission to trust our inner best. We are not feeling safe, psychologically safe to perform and give our optimal output. I just I think that is part of what needs to change. Is it's not just the mentality in the trenches. It's not just the people that we're trying to bring into the system and give them this entrepreneurial mindset.
hmm
We also need to foster this way of thinking all the way across the full spectrum. It has to be top
hmm
down, bottom up, you have to live and breathe your corporate values. And one of those corporate values has to be, we know who we are. We are super intentional about our ICP fit. We're super intentional about the problem that we're solving. We're super intentional about the way that we solve our internal stakeholders, our people. And when all of those things are in alignment and you've got that kind of system and also psychological safety permeating through the organization, I think that's the recipe for success, is that beautiful balance between strategy and planning, as well as complete intentionality and focus, mental focus. So
I think that message, the good news is, lest one think that there's too much pessimism in my head, I think that message is getting out there, and I think it's increasing. The technology and social media have been a detriment in some ways, but they've been a tremendous benefit. And what I see by observation is that there's an increasing democratization of the economy. There are more people, and I do not believe it's just age related. I believe it's more as a percentage across all the generations who are in a professional role. They believe increasingly that they can go out and create their own opportunity. I think Uber made it easy for us to believe that anyone could do it. Yeah. And so it's permeating more and more and more roles. It's never been more evident than in the fractional roles. Yes. It's never been more evident than the coaching roles. It's never been more evident than any number of new startups and
emerging side hustles
that are coming out there.
Yep.
And the side hustles are really growing much more. It used to be a side hustle was going to be in a cashier at whatever store you liked.
Yeah. But
it's not anymore. And to me, that is pure optimism. People believe it. And I do see that as an opportunity for people, not only for themselves, but the economic and the good place for the citizens of the world to really go out and have that confidence, go out and do that. The more we do that, the more that democratization of the economy happens and grows, I think the better place we're going to be in, because there's going to be, by necessity, less BS. You have to say, okay, well, I have to hire a coach to help me with my career. I have to hire a fractional CFO. Some of the first ones that go in the down economy are the recruiters, the internal recruiters, right? How many of the internal recruiters are going to move into a contract 1099 role? Is that growing? It probably is. And I think it's evidenced across all of the different functional skill sets in business. And so I think there's a lot of optimism out there that people are starting to get that, and people are starting to draw the line in the sand, and we won't take it anymore. Yeah. And not in the rebellious sense, but in the I believe in me sense.
Knowing your own worth, right?
Yes.
I love that. Beautiful optimism, Chuck.
Well, I try to be, even though I come out negative sometimes. Really, in my heart, I really am an optimist, I swear to God, as far as you know. Well, we have, oh my gosh, went so many different directions, and I can't help but love it. No need to be sorry. That's how we did it in prep, right? I said, I'm not entirely sure which way this is going to go. So out goes the outline, and we just have some fun, which is really the point, isn't it, in the end?
Oh, absolutely.
So if you had any advice that you could give people, how would you sum this up?
Oh, God.
I know, right?
Of all the million lanes we went in, Chuck.
Yep. Pick one. Pick 10. I don't care.
Be intentional.
Be intentional.
Life is really just that simple. When you get real quiet and you ask yourself, just get real quiet, tune out the noise, ask yourself, what's going on with me? What's serving me? What's not serving me? Get really intentional about what it is that you want to do. And then ask yourself, what is it going to take to adequately get there? Remove the ego. Give yourself as much grace as you can. Give yourself, all that positive mental fuel, that beautiful, abundant mindset, but be intentional. And then adequately resource and plan for your success. Ask yourself the tough questions. What's it going to take? If I realized I am 39 as of next month, and I asked myself that long, hard look in the mirror question. I'm like, holy cow, I'm building enablement systems for companies that I don't believe are putting their people first. And that's a scary thing to admit to oneself. I've lived a lot of life in 38, nearly 39 years. I've been a founder 3 times over. I have I've been an enterprise sales leader. I have been in charge of global enablement. I've been an individual contributor and so many different things in between there. That it's a scary thing to feel like you have it all figured out, only to realize, no, we're constantly evolving. One of the things I think you'd asked me at one point in time, Chuck, was, what's my exit plan? I don't know that I ever want to know that answer, because I want to be here in this moment, not yesterday's moment, not the moment a year from now. I want to be in this moment, asking myself, am I joyful? Am I giving abundantly of what I can offer to hopefully nurture and empower the best in somebody else? Because that's my purpose. My personal mission statement, ever since as long as I can remember, maybe 17 years old, was always to nurture and empower every life I'm fortunate enough to touch. And giving myself permission to get real quiet, and having a really great husband that supports me and let me get quiet when I said, hey, honey, you know that stable paycheck? You mind letting me question that a little bit? He was the first person to say, this is your soul. Like, this is what you're meant to do. You are meant to help as many people as you can. And if you don't feel like doing it through the lens that you're currently doing it is serving you, you need to be the best wife and role model and person on this planet that you're meant to be. He had my back. So my best advice I can ever give anyone: give yourself permission to ask yourself the tough questions. Remove the ego. It's hard. It's hard to be quiet and honest with yourself. But when you get super intentional, and yeah, the more specific, the more terrific, the more you're going to come into yourself. You're going to have your epiphanies. You're going to know what serves you, what to tune into and what to tune out. You're going to follow your passion. You're going to follow your purpose. If you give yourself, that unshakable mindset, which is real hard, and we're all human, and I have tough days too. But the more you can lean into abundance and lean away from scarcity, you know what you're doing. You just have to trust the process and adequately plan for it, resource yourself, but just do the damn thing. But you got to listen to yourself in the first place.
Well, mic drop. I am going to take your comments about be intentional, and I'm going to put them on the beginning of this episode. And that way everybody hears them first. And it would be my hope that as they listen to you and I have this conversation, that they approach this entire hour with those two words in mind and dissect every thought that comes out of it through that lens. How can I take what I may have learned from Sara, and how can I be intentional for me, and most importantly, for others?
Absolutely.
So that, when I move on from whatever it is I move on from, I feel nothing but good about it.
Life's too short.
Life's too damn short.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, you need to get back to your 2-year-old and your husband, because that's what's most important. I cannot be more grateful for your time. This has been an absolute pleasure. I feel like I got to know you even more today. It's kind of fun when you get to find things in common with people in a different part of the country and from very different walks of life. You may be a cheesehead, but I'm a cheesesteak head. And, yet there's a lot of similarities, and I love making that connection. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And folks, anything you want to know about Sara Filipiak, please contact her. She reached out to me initially, and I could not be more grateful for the opportunity to have met her, to have learned from her, and hopefully to keep learning from her. So go out. You'll see it in the show notes. Trust me, the water's warm and there's room for all. Thanks.
Thank you, Chuck.